Simple, Dr. Trinh? We just start eating better? Is that so obvious that we overlook it?
Eating. I mean, aren't we supposed to take pills to feel better?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I got tons of pills. The pills are what make you feel better.
I'm happy to bring on today Dr. Paul Goodman from the East Coast, and who has a passion to speak about food as medicine. And welcome, Dr. Goodman, to OC
Thanks,
Talk
Dr.
Radio.
Trinh. Thank you. And
Tell us about yourself.
Meet both of you. Yeah. So I am by training an ophthalmologist, so an eye surgeon, and had where does it start? My first project in this arena was started a company with another ophthalmologist. We were trying to provide the correct types of food for patients with macular degeneration. One of the biggest studies in this field is the age-related eye disease study. In this field in general, what foods can prevent disease. And of course, we knew that. It's a big part of our training. It's not a secret. But what was impossible was to ever get patients on the right track in the 10 minutes you have with them in the clinic. So we decided, partially inspired by the fact that we were sitting at home when our offices closed and the pandemic started, we decided to really get this moving and try to find ways to get patients on, eating the right foods via education, via providing those foods, whatever. And I'm proud of that project, but it was not, it's not what I'm doing now. Essentially, a very long story short, I began to expand my expertise from just eyes to the broader scope of what diseases you can prevent with food. And that led me to the doorstep of Fresh and Lean, which is a meal delivery company. They deliver ready-made meals. Their meals were conveniently already appropriate for the existing research. And what they didn't have was someone to really guide their efforts in putting their food in the hands of patients, rather than, say, a consumer that they reached through Facebook. These are people with diseases through doctors, things like that. So that's really where I am now. I stand on the shoulders of a lot of research showing what is in some ways obvious, that of course, an apple a day, but what's changed in the last few years is we can, as clinicians, almost prescribe this food, because not that that's what we're doing, but the benefits are proven in the same way that we've got proven benefits of timolol for blood pressure and things like that with large randomized controlled trials. So I've become a bit of a soapboxer on eating better to prevent disease. And there's a lot of different ones. Yep.
What's interesting is macular degeneration is one of the few, if not the only condition where we actually prescribe antioxidants.
That's right.
And I'm wondering, why is it that this is the only condition that we prescribe antioxidants and not other conditions that are caused by inflammation?
I think it's a combination of two factors. One is there is a study that gives us enough evidence that so we can do it, and still maintain, in a way that's faithful to our training. It's not a guess. It's not snake oil. Like the age-related eye disease study proves that these things are effective, certainly versus their potential side effects, which is near zero. I think the other side of it is that macular degeneration has little else that we can do. I mean, depending on the type, we can intervene at late stages to kind of keep the ship from sinking. But in terms of preventing, it's not like blood pressure where you have some pretty effective treatments. So I think the combination of those two, very effective, proven intervention in the form of antioxidants and little else, combines to make it, as I said, one of the sort of the originals in the food as medicine space.
So if there is real studies on this, double-blind, real clinical trials like Dr. Trinh participates in all the time and runs, if this is proven, not just anecdotal, why do so few doctors do it? Is it simply because they don't have much nutrition training? That's what I've heard. Is it because they're just in a mindset of pills and procedures? Or is there something else? What keeps doctors from prescribing food as medicine?
I think certainly the lack of exposure to this in our training is a big part. We had like, I did my training at University of Maryland, and they made an effort to train us in nutrition, but that's first and second year. There wasn't a ton of it, and then it doesn't come up again in third and fourth because it's not ingrained in our clinical process, right? Your attending is not going to ask you what foods could have kept Mr. S out of the hospital with his congestive heart failure. You're sort of focused elsewhere. It's not a monolith, but for the most part, that's the issue. So you come out of training, you're not thinking about it, then you're training your med students when you're a resident, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that's the only issue. The other part is it's so impractical for a clinician in the office to take sufficient time to make a real dent in this. Dietary changes are extraordinarily hard. It's an old problem trying to get patients to eat better. It's not ignored. I mean, primary care doctors are certainly addressing this, but to really get someone on the right track, no matter how much time you spend, you might fail, and it's so hard. And then on top of that, to take the added demand of having studies that you have to adhere to, it just becomes impractical. So I think probably it's an important problem to solve, or an important opportunity to improve patients, but we can't just look at clinicians and say, okay, on top of everything else, because the pills are still important. This doesn't replace them. But on top of all that, now you have to take an extra, 20 minutes per routine visit to cover it. It's possible. And Dr. Trinh, you're in the primary care office, right? I mean, your time is, I'm sure, so in such demand that how could we then say, for your 60 patients a day, even add 5 minutes, and that's, it's 3
Generous.
hours, 6 hours, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Dr. Trinh? You've been preaching this for years. This show goes into healthy food. You give talks on healthy brain, healthy diet, how to eat your way to health. And yet, are you making any progress, or are we swimming upstream? The doctors are like, that's somebody else's job.
I think we're making progress. I think more folks are aware now about inflammation and the effects of inflammation on the body and health. I think there is a lot more progress that needs to be done, but with the advent of new classes of new categories of healthcare providers, naturopathic physicians, right? 10 years ago, who knows who they were, right?
We should have one of those on sometime, because I don't think people know enough about what they do. I hear that term bantied about, and I don't know if that's just a
naturopath out there. So there's categories now, and there's now there's now the American Institute of Integrative Health, right? There's a board now for where physicians can go and get their integrative medicine certification. So I think that awareness is now being brought more to light, but we are still just touching the tip of the iceberg, because so much more needs to get done. We need a lot more we need many more Dr. Goodmans out there to get the message out.
I will tell you one. I'll just give you one anecdotal, and I'll let Dr. Goodman respond here. I'll give you one anecdotal evidence. I love to give stories of my own past here. So my late father, who worshipped his doctor, he grew up in the generation, if the doctor said, stand on one leg and hold your breath all day, he would have tried. Whatever the doctor said. And if I tried to get him to do something, he'd say, well, let me go check with my doctor. The doctor was the beginning and end of everything. I don't know that we have that kind of trust and belief. I don't know that we see our doctors as often as my dad did. I think my generation has changed that. We kind of go in a fee for service. When I really desperately need something, I go see the doctor. The rest of the time, I don't have much of a relationship with my doctor to have these kinds of discussions. But late in life, my father always had a pot belly. He was a big guy, and that, hurt him. He had an aorta that burst. He had other sorts of things and stuff, heart problems and things here. And finally, the doctor said, we got to tackle this. My dad says, I've tried everything. And he said, why don't you just stop eating sugar? And my dad said, I don't put sugar in anything. He said, look at your food. My dad ate out of a box. My dad ate out of fast food. My dad ate out, he was an older guy, didn't cook very well. And my dad became a advocate. He was shocked how much sugar was in everything that we consume in the Great Western diet. And that one thing, he lost weight. He felt better. I think it extended his life. It was kind of just a quick comment that the doctor gave him, and it had such powerful impact on his life. So I'll let Dr. Goodman respond. He was going to say something about, doctors doing this, but when you do it, even a quick comment, even if you don't have time to do the whole nutritional diet plan, a few words planted at the right moment can have powerful effect.
Yeah, I think that is the anecdote is right in line with what I was going to say, which is that it's really not going to be it's not a one solution problem. There's going to be, I think it's worth investing from all directions in getting people to eat better, because the benefit versus the downside is there's no compare. And a lot of those solutions are going to be what I would call like intelligent nudges, where much like your dad had, if you look at it from a public health perspective, if we just go around and get everyone to cut back on their sugar by 1%. Now, on an individual level, you're not going to suddenly look better in a bathing suit, but if you look at the whole country, we're going to have this large decrease in everything. Realistically, I mean, same kind of thing with like cigarettes, and these sorts of things are so effective. So when you look at it when you look at the problem as I need to get every single person eating only whole grains, and it's all these things, it looks impossible, and it probably is. But really what you want is to figure out ways to nudge people in that direction. And that's going to come from everywhere. A general change in our culture, as in medicine, would be helpful. Some awareness of all the things people should be eating, so you can push them towards one. And then, for me, again, I was looking at this from the perspective of what solutions can I affect myself. I started with that eye project and realized that I was biting off too much. I was asking patients to switch entirely. So I sought out somewhere where I could have a tool at my disposal that made this process more convenient and easy. And that, that's what I'm finding to be most effective now is just sending people these meals is a good way to do it. It's not the best way for everyone, but just as an example,
And for full disclosure, are you involved in this company, or do you get compensated?
Yeah, full disclosure, I work for Fresh and Lean. That is mine. So I'm trying not to be too salesy. Don't take it that way, but rather just as an example, like it is one way to do it. And for, if you're someone with the resources, or if you're plugged into a program that's going to do it for you, sometimes jumpstarting your diet just by having it like put on a platter literally for you.
And is Fresh and Lean everywhere? Is it in Southern California? I've never heard of Fresh.
So Fresh and Lean is everywhere. It's the number one ready-made meal delivery company in the country.
Okay.
And they do about 300,000 meals per week. That's the direct to consumer side. Yeah, they're quite large. That's the side of their company where, generally a young person who more often than not is going to live in a city or California who wants keto or paleo or something. They go to the website, they get these things delivered, and they address their more specific health needs, which tends to be focused on performance and, that kind of stuff. What I've been doing, what I was brought on to do is an initiative that's a lot more on the healthcare side of things. So we're evidence-based, working with hospitals, healthcare providers, things like that. All the projects are just getting started, but mostly what we're trying to do is work with stakeholders and prove that it works, so that they'll then say, okay, we'll buy this for our patients because you're getting the following results. And anyhow,
is the food at Fresh and Lean, is it categorized based on diagnosis, or is it just overall generalized healthy? Like if I'm diabetic, is there a diabetic meal for me?
So yeah, there's some smoke and mirrors to categorizing, because the diet is oftentimes almost exactly the same. For example, I mean, some things are very specific, like a renal patient, that's different. But if you go by conditions, including diabetes, and then look to the studies almost always use the same diet, because they're finding it to be effective. They tend to, when they make these big studies, they're going to basically take from the same, use that same, the same parameters, basically a Mediterranean diet. And so it's pretty easy to make a one-size-fits-all diet. And then if the partner that we're working with needs diabetic and hypertensive, specific options for their patients, we can label them that way, but often it's going to be almost the same. As long as you keep it low salt, it's then going to be just the same, including for like Alzheimer's and cognition, which I know, Dr. Trinh, is a big focal point for you.
Yeah, agree. I mean, the Mediterranean diet works for both the heart and the brain.
Yeah.
And define the Mediterranean, define that for us, because we hear that term bandied about, and I want to get into some of these diets, because we are diet obsessed, diet crazed, and I think we are, because the doctor's not giving us any direction or much information, we're out trying to figure out ourselves, and we're all over the place. Is this good? Is that bad? Is this better? What is the Mediterranean diet?
I'm glad you asked, because that was my experience starting in this field. Was I saw a mention of a lot of Mediterranean diets. I was like, okay, let me figure out exactly what that is.
Right.
And what's funny is that's actually not that easy, because it is not a specific term. What's happened is the Mediterranean diet, when you look at studies, has become very specific. So essentially, the studies have defined it because they have to have a certain diet. So in general, it's going to be fish like once or twice a week, ideally fatty fish. So salmon is the classic example. Mm-hmm. The whole grains, either as much as you can, or three to five times a day, depending on the study. A lot of nuts, seeds, legumes.
Legumes being beans, or some kind of beans.
Yeah, right? Beans. We eat a lot of chickpeas in our house because that counts.
I have a question for you when it comes to whole grain.
Yeah.
So you heard of Dr. Is it Permuter?
Say it again, Permuter?
Permuter from Loma Linda. He has a book. I think it's on my.
Oh yeah.
The grain. Yeah, Permuter, right?
Yeah.
Cardiothoracic surgeon, now out there preaching about diet and nutrition. So his whole premise, a big part of his premise is that grain is bad for you because it messes up your gut health, blah, 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 inflammation. And at the same time, the Mediterranean diet includes whole grains.
See, there we go.
So is it good or is it bad? What do you think?
I think it's good. I'm fairly confident, although I'm sure Dr. Perlmutter would make a good case. I think, gut health is a real hot topic, and specifically microbiotic flora in connection to your a variety of different health conditions. Very active research there, and I wouldn't claim to be sure, but I would guess that fiber is good. The benefits of it are fairly obvious. The studies, which I can't quote off the top of my head, but I'm fairly certain I could, given a few minutes, find them that are convincing that fiber is a great way to combat high cholesterol, diabetes, a good way to make you feel full, good for gastrointestinal health at its most basic. Yes. And, then if you look at like the process by which the bacteria in your gut process the fiber and turn it into calories, that, to my knowledge, is fairly complicated and not totally well understood. So he could be right there. If you had to pick I would definitely go high fiber.
And what about these
Yes.
other add-ons? For a while, we were putting acidophilus in our milk, probiotics, this or something, things we take to add little bugs, good bugs into our body to digest stuff and help break down food and
I think there's a good
yogurt.
chance that
And, yeah.
those interventions came before solid evidence. They may work, but I don't think they were being done quite intelligently enough yet. But not to say it doesn't work. I don't think there was any evidence that it hurt. What I would say is that the companies that I'm starting to get exposure to that are researching this are really smart, and there's some really high level academic power in this field now. One company that I've come to read a lot about is Biome, and they're probably one of a few, but they just happen to be the one I know about, where they're doing RNA sequencing from stool samples, right. And from there and then combining that data with other things like blood sugar, cholesterol, figuring out the expression levels of gut bacteria versus the outcomes, and then using essentially like artificial intelligence, right, to put together what makes sense. I don't know if they'd have an answer on what you asked, Paul, or not. If they did, then I would say okay. And if not, then I'd say it's pending. It's just as that data accumulates, we're going to get really smart about what should be in our guts. But it's extraordinarily complicated. You think about the millions of different permutations, and probably lots of good ones, lots of bad ones, and everything in between. And it's just not a simple place to go. And again, it goes back to what's a practical way to approach it. Seems that eating in a generally healthy way, and I do include fiber in that, is probably going to push you in the right direction.
So let me ask one more question, then Dr. Trin's got a lot more specific knowledge than I do about this. You guys can talk specifics, but again, I'm talking confusion. And so you're saying eat a Mediterranean diet. We're not even sure what that is. You're saying eat healthy, whole grains, and then people are saying, oh, but not those. That's bad. Or this is bad. I thought that was good. Or eggs good or eggs bad. I mean, we hear this stuff all the time. And another one that I think everybody's trying to figure out is it better to eat your way to healthiness, eat a physical apple, or is it just ingesting stuff like vitamins, these supplements, these things that will somehow stimulate a bacterium that can stimulate the healthy gut? Should we be consuming them in a natural form, or should we just be overloading our system with extra this, extra that? And so back again, we're back to a pill, we're back to a supplement, we're back to something to because we can't eat it. We're not really eating it in our Big Mac diet.
Dr. Trinh, do you have any thoughts on the supplement versus whole foods? Because I certainly can.
Supplements is a supplement. It should supplement. It shouldn't be the main thing, right? And if you already have adequate calcium levels or vitamin D levels, what is the additional benefit of overdoing supplements if the body needs it?
Yeah.
Right. So the data shows that, if you're low in vitamin D and you supplement that, that's great. But if your vitamin D levels are already great, is there any benefit to overdoing the vitamin D or the overdoing the extra pills? I think we have the most expensive urine in the, right. Our country has the most expensive urine. We're peeing out all these excess stuff that we drink. And
I'll give you one more, and then I'll shut up on this subject and let you guys riff on it here, because I've always wondered. I do take a multivitamin. I take some other supplements because it sounds good. I don't know really which ones I need or which ones I want, but give them all to me. I'm going to get I'm going to take them all, everything I can consume here. And so many times I've read studies or doctors or researchers say, just what Dr. Trin's kind of suggesting, your body doesn't absorb them in that fashion. If I just take a bunch of vitamin C, how much does my body absorb? How much do I just pee right out again? As opposed to eating a real orange with real vitamin C in it that my body might consume and absorb better. I wonder if just overloading supplements isn't just filling up our pee with good stuff.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're on the same page. I have a pretty strong opinion on this, but not to discount supplements. There are certainly examples where they're proven to work. And you'll see, I'm very dogmatic about it. Like if it's not proven, I don't like to recommend it. And, again, back to age-related eye disease study, that supplement went through the process. It works. And, some B vitamins for older adults, certainly pregnant women taking vitamins, or those really do work. But in general, there's, I think, an over-reliance on it versus whole foods. The NIH, Dr. Collins had this statement where he said, you have to get your nutrients from whole foods first. There is no substitute. And I think, Paul, as you said, the complexity of what we eat, take salmon again, it's this matrix of protein, good fat, vitamins, micronutrients, and they're all wrapped up together. Their interwovenness is not irrelevant for how they're processed by your body. So then taking them to think there's too much hubris that we think we can take those out, put them in a pill, and have it still work. It just intuitively you wouldn't expect it to, and the science bears out that often there is no benefit from when they do a really large trial, they don't really find a benefit from multivitamins generally, and sometimes, in fact, more often than any benefit, they're finding harms. They don't know why, but there's an increase in fatality, in fatality rates in the treatment arm in those studies a lot of times.
Really? Okay. So there's a case where it might have a negative benefit, and yet
it's quite slight, but it's there. And I wouldn't want to discourage people here necessarily. I'm not comfortable doing that, but I also would say look to whole foods first. Like there's just no way around that.
And yet, every food I take now, every label has, and they artificially jam in some more vitamin C, some more vitamin B, some more vitamin D. They put in something and so they're all proclaiming, yes, these Cheetos might not have any other benefit. I'm being silly. Even good foods, they're saying, they're always trying to tout all these extra B vitamins, D vitamins, antioxidants, blah, 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 that they're putting. And I wonder, are they just injecting this stuff in there, just like I'm injecting a multivitamin? And am I really absorbing it just because it's not in a pill? It's now been pushed into my, I don't know, SpaghettiOs or something here, my cereal.
So between your Cheetos and SpaghettiOs, Paul, I'm a little worried.
Yeah, you can see where my Western. I don't have a Mediterranean diet. I have a Western diet.
I got a question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the health benefits of intermittent fasting?
That's another one Dr. Trinh talks about.
Yeah, that's a nice hot topic. I just put a study in my little list here. Let me see if I can bring it up again. So my first thought with any fad diet like that is like, forget it. Because, sorry, my keyboard is very clickety clackety. So generally I say to a patient, don't bother. Stick to a diet that's if your goal is weight loss, which intermittent fasting generally is, anything besides a sort of complete diet, not to be too much with the Mediterranean, but it's a good example where you're eating healthy foods, low calorie density. It has to combine, you're not going to shortcut needing to have exercise and portion control along with it. Intermittent fasting works great, but my guess, what I'm saying here is my guess would be it's temporary, like every other option like that, because eventually you're going to fail. And I do think that's true. Like to a large extent, intermittent fasting is very, very hard. And though some people have the willpower to stick with it as a public health idea, at best folks are going to do temporarily and then slingshot way back and probably end up a little fatter than they started. That all being said, intermittent fasting does have a few studies that show real benefit. Big studies. There's one in JAMA from December that did show, like, meta-analysis of intermittent fasting, that it genuinely helped with related health outcomes to obesity. So in other words, it may really be a good option. I'm hesitant to, like, it seems a little gimmicky.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and can people really stick to that? Or the other thing is, do people say, okay, I waited till 4 p.m. to eat, and now I begin, just stuffing it all in, which understandably they would. You are fighting against some potent in nature, which is the desire to eat. It overwhelms all willpower, as we all know. So yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings on it. Among the fad diets, I might be most convinced to lean towards it, but it probably is just so unsustainable that it has detrimental effects outside of its direct effects. You put someone on this diet, it fails, they're going to be low emotionally after, and they're just going to be hard to get on the right track. I think baby steps, like we talked about, a little bit here and there, and nudging them towards the kind of diet that you can do your whole life. So, the sort of healthier foods versus the Western style is a bit much better bet.
Even the word diet means there's a starting point, and at some point you're going to end that diet, right? So it's just bound to failure if it's called diet. Even it's really got to be a lifestyle that's integrated, as opposed to a diet.
And I think that goes to the heart of what so many of us struggle with. I come to the doctor for a solution, and in our Western world, I want a quick solution. I want a pill. I want an intervention. I want a thing to do. I'm going to do this for 30 minutes. I'm going to take one of these. I'm going to eat 2 more of these. I'm going to do something. But we don't really want to change the pattern that brought us here. I don't want to stop eating Cheetos and cornflakes. I don't really want to change my whole lifestyle, and my lifestyle may be the cause, the stress, the lack of sleep, the lack of exercise, the bad food, all these things that got me here. Just fix it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. There's no easy way. There's no shortcut. I mean, not long term. And that's my belief. If you look at the population as a whole, and there are individuals with remarkable ability to do something like intermittent fasting, and I think they are, kudos to them. But I think they're the ones that people searching for answers are going to see pictures of on the internet and be, think that can be me, and it's just not possible for everyone. Myself included. Like I can't. When I've had a day where tough day at the clinic, or my kids have been tough all day or whatever, I'm so likely to reach for an emotional eating food, and that's gonna take the train right off the tracks, and then forget the intermittent fasting. I'm slingshotting back.
So are there a couple of foods, that being said, I'm going to go back to being an American. I know you want me to change my lifestyle and build in intermittent fasting on a regular basis, on a thoughtful basis. I know you want me to really evaluate my diet and start pulling sugar out and salt out. And I want you to exercise more and all these things. And believe me, we're all trying. That's our New Year's Eve, New Year's resolutions that we all fail in over and over again. But I think by and large, we do live healthier, certainly than I compare my father, who never exercised, who always ate fatty food and meat and potatoes and, all this stuff until the doctor changed his mind late in life here on some of these things. That being said, are there some quick fixes? Are there a couple of superfoods that we should be sticking into our diet? I hear salmon all the time. Are there a couple of easy ones to add? If I can't overhaul the whole system, are there some things I can supplement my diet with, or insert into my diet, or pull out of my diet that will have a dramatic effect? What do you guys think?
What do you think, Dr. Trinh?
Ooh.
Give me some superfood. For example, Dr. Trinh works in Alzheimer's, and I periodically hear, we had one of the Alzheimer's board members on years ago, and they said there are a couple superfoods. Cinnamon, for some reason, I don't know if that's really true or not. Cinnamon helps stimulate something.
There is the issue with studies on nutrition is that it is very, very difficult to control all the other factors outside of nutrition that affects the results of the study. Let me give you an example. I want to do a study on, let's say, vitamin B12 and Alzheimer's, right? And so I got a whole group of folks taking vitamin B12. I got another group not taking vitamin B12. But what I can't control is, besides vitamin B12, what else are they doing? Right? Are they putting their vitamin B12 in cups of ice cream every day? That negates that effect, right? And so these nutrition clinical studies, to draw these conclusions about nutrition is quite difficult. When you're trying to isolate a pill or one, right, or one thing, you're trying to isolate turmeric because you can't control all the other factors that the person's taken, and the results isn't really that accurate, I think, unless you're a mouse and you can control exactly what the mouse ate. Right. But in humans, you can add these supplements, but if they live a lifestyle that's not all that great, it's going to negate the effect of that supplement.
Yeah, it's something I learned. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
It's as I've gotten more exposure to this, I've come to appreciate that idea that nutrition research is hard. Paul, I mean, what that idea of a pharmaceutical company doing a study on their pill is quite easy. The control group doesn't get it, and the intervention group does. But yeah, when you're talking about diet, you can't, like, literally, if you're doing whole foods, shove the salmon in the people's body. So you do these studies where it's like you ask them to eat it, you then do a questionnaire trying to assess whether they did or not. But there's a lot of error there. Patients recalling their diet at the end of the week accurately, maybe not being entirely truthful. And then also perhaps not eating what you tell them to, because if that was so easy, we wouldn't have to be meeting here.
But again, if you're a doctor and you're going to prescribe, you come to me and you say, all right, Paul, you got a problem here. You should look at diet, exercise, sleep, all these things. And I say, yeah, I heard you. And you say, time's up, 5 minutes is over. I gave you my little quick advice. You don't give me a menu plan. You don't give me a dietary thing. Is there one thing? Pulling sugar out. That seems to be everybody's thing. We consume tons and tons and tons of sugar. As all the processed food, they put sugar in it. We consume tons and tons of salt because all the processed food and the packaged food and everything we go to. We consume tons of butter. That's another one. I'm just shocked. Every restaurant, you want to make it better, put a little more butter on it here. There are certain those three ingredients seem to be the core to the Western diet: sugar, salt, and butter. And I wonder if just removing as much of that as you can won't use olive oil instead of butter. Eliminate salt altogether and yank out as much sugar as you can. So maybe it's that. If we just go to those holy three, is there another beyond the Trinity? Is there something else? I'm a good Irish Catholic. I have to think of everything in the Trinitarian terms here. Is there anything?
I think you're not going to find a legitimate answer to that question of the superfoods on one side and like the super bad foods on the other. I think my best advice would be to if you're a physician working with a patient, to figure out what's the easiest stuff to pluck out and start there. And if you're listening to this and you're worried about your own eating habits, just think about baby steps. Like, don't worry about everything at once. Take it all in, look at what a Mediterranean diet includes. And again, it's, fish, whole grains, veggies, fruits, getting rid of red meat, fried foods, sugar, and just see, like, where can you push a little bit more? You go to the grocery store and you're thinking about dinner that week. If you change your meal plan for that week to include one less fatty red meat, that's a great step. And then keep that step for next week. Next week, change something. And then what you're going to find, this has happened to me over the last few years, is it just accumulates slowly. I went from, I didn't eat terribly, but it was without thought. I just ate whatever I wanted.
Right.
And now I have, without even realizing it, become almost vegetarian. I am not vegetarian by any means. I'm happy to eat meat, but I so rarely do, because I have just said to myself, hey, this week, let me try like quinoa and this and that. And it starts to sound like, not to make fun of California, I know you guys are out there, but
That's okay.
like it starts to sound like what you eat for brunch in California. But like, you just, but again, to go back, don't take it all in at once. Little baby steps. There really are not superfoods, in my opinion. I mean, if you zero in on one diagnosis, then yeah, eat berries if you're trying to prevent Alzheimer's. But
so here's a question for you. What is the science behind why red meat is bad?
That's a good question.
Is it the red meat, or is it like the stuff we're pumping into the cows, like the hormones and antibiotics and everything else? Or is it the meat itself?
So I am much less concerned about the hormones, antibiotics, all that kind of stuff. I don't know that we're really proven that we need to worry about that kind of stuff, at least not to the extent that, we should be worrying about cholesterol and fat. It is the constituents of it. So in terms of the type of fat you're going to be eating, that's, I think, where we really go wrong with red meat. I'm trying to bring it up before I just spout off the top of my head.
So if I had a steak, but I cut out the fat trimmings, is that steak still good? Like healthy?
No. I mean, better that you don't just like consume the fat cap each time, but it's so, compare it relative to salmon. So fat has a bad rap, but it's not necessarily bad for you. The type of fat matters more. Salmon is very, very fatty. I mean, it's almost pure fat and protein. But the fats are polyunsaturated fatty acids with, and in particular, omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, good for you. Lots of benefits that we're not sure about, but maybe like more filling versus, per calorie, things like that. And then fats, I'm looking up the percentage that's saturated fat. I mean, I think it's nearly all saturated fat. Let's see.
With the...
or not all, but around half. So it depends on the cut, right? It's like there's leaner cuts of red meat that some studies allow the participants to eat, but in general, that steak is like all saturated fat. Saturated fat is the bad kind. It's not the worst kind, but it's close. So in that case, it's not. People think that, oh, you're eating fat, so you're getting fat, and that's the connection to heart disease. But that's actually just a correlation. Like what's really likely happening is that the consumption of bad fats leads to inflammation, leads to atherosclerosis, does perhaps lead to weight gain more efficiently by, like, let's say insulin spikes or things like that. I'm kind of making that up. I don't know if I've ever seen a study that suggested it, but those are really common things you find in terms of the bad foods. And red meat just tends to have all of it. And then if you zoom out, Dr. Trinh, you mentioned nutrition studies are hard. We can't always, they're a lot of times empirical. We can't always figure out why. We just know that if we give patients a lot of red meat, they tend to die earlier. And before we find out why, we're gonna say, hey, we'll figure this out, but don't eat this. Because we have proven essentially causation due to the degree of statistical significance of this relationship. And I think, Paul, it's an interesting part of nutrition is that, in fact, in medicine in general, we don't always know why.
Oh yeah.
It's just like, we know it's happening, so stop eating it. My goodness.
So here's a interesting question for you.
Yeah.
In the field of I'm not sure if it's food or nutrition, what do you think about CBD oil?
I don't have any thoughts on it, honestly. I've had some wild claims laid upon me about the powers of CBD, and I don't know that there's studies to support it outside of, I think there's some strong data for seizure prevention. But I think that people are so passionate about it that tends to be a recipe for over claiming. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably there's very little downside. There's obviously an association with marijuana, which people are really in favor of, and also, again, passionately in favor of. So I would say take CBD claims with a grain of salt. And but not, obviously we're low salt here on this podcast, but
the studies need to be done. Obviously, the clinical trials need to be done. But I had a lot of patients cut down on their pain meds by replacing it with CBD ointments and creams and things of that sort.
Well, I think if it works, then do it. But as a scientist, I have to be open to the idea that that's a placebo effect. But maybe not. The fact is it's not proven. When there's no downside like that, then absolutely. I mean, I had all kinds of things I would do for patients with dry eye.
Yeah.
It's so hard to treat. And if it helped, like, I didn't care if I was sure it was working or not. I just felt better. So great. And there's all kinds of ways to feel better. And your mental health and emotions are closely tied, and hence the placebo effect and things like that.
Very much. I mean, topics like CBD, things of that sort, is where the patient's over here, but the science hasn't really caught up yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a gap, and those things need to be studied.
And then I think our responsibility is to prevent harm. And, like, again, back to my clinic, when patients had ideas on things they wanted to do that I was confident were harmless, I would not discourage them. In fact, I encouraged them, and I wanted to know how it went, because I tried to be open-minded. I think doctors have this bad reputation for being like anti anything outside of what the pharmaceutical industry is paying them to think, and it's really not that way. But being cognizant of that, I tried to be really open to not scare off my more naturopathic patients. And they said their grandma always put honey in their tea whenever their eyes hurt, and it made them feel better. And I was like, great. And, I would say I don't know that it works. I have no reason to think it works, but it doesn't seem harmful. And if it helps, super.
Yeah. Well, it's the naturopathic patients are the ones that are more believers of, diet and nutrition.
Yeah. It's an interesting overlap. Now that diet and nutrition has left the hypothetical realm and entered the New England Journal of Medicine realm, now you have a strange party where you've got the Harvard, MD, PhDs in a room with the naturopaths, and everyone's in agreement, and they're not sure what to do with one another.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I just wish more studies were done. The problem is their studies are funded, and the funding mechanisms normally requires an ROI, unless it's funded by the government. And so pharmaceutical companies won't do it because there's no profit motive unless they have a product.
Yeah, it's a real obstacle. And I think it's the only, when you look at study, take the MIND diet, which is specifically for Alzheimer's. It's like a 50% reduction in Alzheimer's in patients that participated. We don't have a drug that can do that. So, but if we did, that company who invented that drug would make sure that drug was in everyone's hands, even if that drug required people to put in the level of effort that the MIND diet does, which is, let's say, like on a daily basis. A comparable drug, I don't know, like people had to inject it under their toenails, and it's pretty abhorrent, and no one wanted to do it, but the pharmaceutical company would use their resources to make sure people were. But as you said, it's not there. And it's part of what drew me towards sort of an industry side solution, is that having some resources, and we are trying to work, or I am via my company trying to work with healthcare entities to do research, but finding that ROI is really tough. Like, really tough. Really tough.
I totally hear you. And the cool thing with the MIND diet is if you break down the 10 components of the MIND diet, it's like 80% plant-based.
Yeah.
The only thing that's not plant is fish, and then the chicken and poultry.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It boils down to a plant-based diet that doesn't include red meat.
Yeah, and so of course it's good for you, and it's just now we can tell people how good it is for them. Right. Yeah, I love that MIND diet. I was thinking about it coming in because I figured it was high on your mind.
Oh yeah, I teach about it and I preach about it all the time, and so when I go out and do lectures, everyone get a list of the MIND diet, and I tell them to take that list when they go grocery shopping.
Yeah, and again, Paul, when you're looking at what can you do, take Dr. Trin's list and just see how good of a score you can get. Even a 1 out of 8, it's not bad. It's better than 0. It's not black and white. Like my diet does not decrease your Alzheimer's risk to 0, and eating Western diet does not increase it to 100%. What you're doing is shifting downwards, and everything you do can help. And Alzheimer's is really scary. So
I think the emphasis that folks should know is that food is more than just food. Food is information, right? Food either turns on your genes, turns off your genes. It feeds your genome information, and so it's more than just food.
Yeah, it's like Hippocrates said, "Let food be thy medicine." It is not just lunch; it's your medicine. Not that you should stop taking your other medicine, but I think that potency is the real message I've been trying to now get across. Is it's an opportunity to improve your health, and not just about what you avoid. We know you can't eat certain things, but what you put in your body has these effects, these active effects. And like you said, that you change how your genes express. Your inflammation is not because it's spicy and it makes your blood vessels hurt. It's because cells absorb certain nutrients and start to transcribe more, catalase or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, that's I have to run because I've got a 12 o'clock meeting, but this is great. It's really fun. I love coming on these podcasts and talking about this stuff. I'm sorry if I just wouldn't stop talking, but
no, I love it. We're at the hour here. Thank you for coming on. We'll have you come back sometime and continue our discussion on this.
Yeah, let me know. I'm happy to do this anytime. Obviously, we could probably do 10 of these and still not really get to the bottom of it. So you just reach out and I'll rearrange the schedule to be here.
And let's give a shout out again to the company that you're working with that's trying to make an effort to make healthy food easier, and we'll deliver it to you. Let's give them a plug here again.
Yeah, so it's Fresh and Lean. It's fresh and then the letter N and lean, Fresh and Lean. We have projects that I run where people can't just find them on the internet. These are your healthcare provider would have to be working directly with me, but if you go to the Fresh and Lean website and sign up, you're going to be getting the same food. It's just going to have a little bit of a different message attached. But essentially, it's Mediterranean diet. It's just with another title. And I highly recommend it. It is pretty good.
Yeah,
there you go. It's a nice intro to it. Even if you just try it, if you say, "I've never had fish, broccoli, quinoa on the same plate. Let me just see what it tastes like." Just give it a go. See how you feel.
And is it a monthly program where they bring you food, or just whenever you want it?
You sign up for a weekly box, and you could stop at any time. But you're going to sign up for a certain plan based on really your preferences. Again, the consumer side, a lot of it's geared towards like keto, paleo, Whole30, which it might not be your primary concern here. But like if I was to recommend the most Mediterranean of them, it'd be Protein Plus.
Protein Plus, okay.
Protein Plus plan is essentially a Mediterranean diet. Same with the vegetarian or vegan option, which is just a meatless Mediterranean. You would then say, I want X meals per week, and you'll have some ability to pick and choose what meals arrive. But then this box arrives on your doorstep with they're not frozen, they're fresh meals that you pop in the fridge, and then to cook them, you just microwave them for 2 minutes, which you think means that they're awful, and they're really not.
Well, it's the only way I eat and many others eat. My father ate out of a microwave in a box for the last 20 years of his life because too few of us know how to cook or have the time to really cook.
This is for you, Paul. Paul, try it. I don't want you eating. I don't want you on the Cheetos and SpaghettiOs. No more.
Oh man, I grew up on that stuff. I
did too. I still love both of those, and everything in moderation. There has been times where I have eaten Cheetos even post education because I love them, especially the flaming ones.
Yes.
Yeah. But like a rare treat at most.
Okay. Well, it's a rare treat to have you on the show. I hope you will come back more often because this is a theme Dr. Trinh hits over and over again. And sometimes you got to just bang it into my head 50 times before I go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah. I feel very strongly about it, as you can tell. So any opportunity to spread the word is worth my time. So thanks again, guys. Have a good one.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
All right. Any final thoughts, Dr. Trinh? All right, there we go. All right. Well, what do you think before we end the thing, Dr. Trinh? Any final thoughts?
It comes back to the fact that food is medicine. Food is more than food. Food is information that you feed to your microbiome that's in your gut, to your bacteria, good and bad, to your genes, right? It's information. And so once we learn that, we'll realize the importance of food behind our health.
Garbage in, garbage out. Like a computer. What are we programming our body to do here? Are we programming our body to be sick and fat and unhealthy? Or are we programming our body to succeed and fight disease? And I think that's, I'll give you one you should come up with for future. This is just a thought. Mm-hmm. We are now living in an era where we're beginning to think COVID is here to stay or for a while. Mm-hmm. So we've moved away from we're going to vaccinate it and everybody's safe. Just vaccinate the next one and the next one. From the smallpox mentality. If we just get everybody vaccinated, then we can move on. We're beginning to realize this thing's morphing. It's more like the flu. There may not be one shot that kills it all. It might help you. It probably does help you, but we're getting to a dealing with it phase. In a dealing with it phase, doesn't it make sense to make your body as strong as possible to fight off infection?
Absolutely. Strengthen your immune system, strengthen your body. Your body is designed to defend itself, and we need to help it.
So why don't you come up with a show of how I can, through food, program my body to be stronger and fight all infections?
Yeah, maybe we should call that show like Happy Hour. Yeah, we'll do the show at 5 p.m. when happy hour starts, and we'll eat while we chat.
Maybe because
good show.
Because I'm serious. I want to know now. If I thought I was relying on the shot to save me, and maybe it saved me from going to the hospital, but it's not going to save me from getting the bug because the bug is changing too fast. So if I got to come back to a lifestyle change. I got to come back to more effort on my part. I got to eat better, sleep better, exercise better, cut out bad stuff, get rid of some of those comorbidities that are killing people here, diabetes included. If I need to do that, then I need help. Come give me a catchy title and a catchy menu, somebody that can say, here is your post-COVID diet to fight off.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Everyone's looking for a formula, right?
Everybody's looking for a formula.
Easy to implement and do. And so yes, that's the task of the docs, is to come up with that and make a recommendation.
Right. I've put it out there. I hope you guys will come back. Thank you. I hope the audience will come back over and over again. Very informative, very powerful, very obvious, and yet something we struggle with doing. So let's keep talking about it.
So simple and yet so hard.
So hard to do. Well, it's not hard to tune in. That's easy to do. Every Thursday we're here. It's Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. Stop by. Hear what's happening. Maybe, just maybe, you get that one little formula, that one little inspiration, that one little idea that'll help you live a healthier life. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, octalkradio.net. Streaming live, as always, from the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.